They showed up with a moving truck before I'd even finished my morning coffee. The rumble of its engine roared through the street like a war drum, announcing the start of an invasion. I stood at the window, clutching my chipped mug, watching as my father stepped out, clipboard in hand, acting like a king reclaiming land he'd lost. My mother followed behind him, barking gentle-sounding orders that barely hid the steel underneath. And then came the delivery van, right behind their truck, stacked with delicate baby furniture, soft white cribs, pastel rocking chairs, a changing table wrapped in boughs. Every box had my address printed on it, like a twisted joke. That was the moment it hit me. They weren't just moving me out of my own house. They were replacing me. My name is Nicole Parker, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever felt like you'd been deleted from your own story? I stepped out onto the porch, trying to keep my voice steady. What is all this? I asked, though I already knew. My sister came waddling up the walkway, one hand resting on her swollen stomach like a trophy. Behind her, a delivery worker carried an armful of tiny pastel blankets. "Oh, Nicole, don't look so upset," my mother called sweetly. "Your sister just needs a little extra room for the babies. You'll love the new studio apartment. It's only a few blocks away." A few blocks away. From the house I had worked to save, paid into, cleaned, maintained. My chest felt like it was caving in. Dad waved at the movers, who were already rolling dollies up the walkway. "Pack up Nicole's things first," he said. "We'll load them and get her settled before the crib deliveries come in." Like I was a broken lamp they needed to clear out before the real decorating could start. I wanted to scream, to rip the clipboard out of Dad's hand and throw it into the street. Instead, my voice came out hoarse, but sharp. "You can't do this. This is my house." He barely glanced at me. "It's family property," he replied. "We're doing what's best for everyone. Your sister can't raise twins in a cramped rental." I felt dizzy. Last year, after losing my job, I'd agreed to refinance under their names, their gift to help me stay afloat. They'd promised I could live here as long as I needed. But now I saw what that promise was really worth. Nothing. The movers started hauling out boxes from my closet. The sound of packing tape ripping across cardboard made my stomach twist. My sister stepped closer, lowering her voice like she was sharing a secret. "Nicole," she sighed, "don't make this hard. You know you don't really need all this space. Think of the babies. Think of the babies. The babies I was being evicted for." Something in me snapped. I walked back inside, hands trembling, heart pounding against my ribs like a warning. I grabbed my phone, ignoring my mother's scolding behind me. 911. I'd never thought I'd have to call the police on my own parents. But here I was, forced into it. "My parents are trying to forcibly remove me from my own home," I told the dispatcher, voice shaking but strong. "My name is on the mortgage. They are moving in baby furniture for my sister." There was a stunned silence on the other end. Then the operator calmly told me to stay inside, that help was on the way. I sank to the floor of my bedroom, breathing shallow, eyes on the familiar walls I'd painted myself. They were already pulling artwork down, stacking it by the front door like garbage. My life, boxed up in minutes. When the police arrived, their flashing lights painted my family's smiling faces in harsh reds and blues. Dad tried to talk to the officers like he owned them. My sister cried on the porch, dramatic as ever, clutching her belly. But I stood tall, voice steady. "I'm not leaving," I told the officers. "This is my home." No one was going to throw me out. Not today. Not ever. The police stood there on my front steps, awkward and uncomfortable, trying to sort out a family drama that had no polite resolution. My father spoke first, his voice dripping with that forced, reasonable calm he used to get his way. "Officer, we're just helping Nicole relocate," he explained, gesturing to the moving truck like it was a thoughtful gift. "Her sister needs the space. It's a family matter." Family matter. I wanted to laugh. They called it family whenever they needed me to sacrifice for them. But the moment I needed family, I was disposable. One of the officers turned to me, sympathy softening the lines of her face. Can you confirm your name is on the deed? I nodded, pulling the mortgage papers from a file I'd hidden in my dresser drawer years ago, because something in me had always known I might need to protect myself. Right here, I said, tapping my name on the document, ignoring the tremor in my hands. The police stepped aside, consulting in low voices, leaving my parents and sister on the porch, their carefully rehearsed performance beginning to crack. My sister glared at me like I was personally destroying her life plan. How can you be so selfish, Nicole? She hissed under her breath. I'm pregnant with twins. Where are they supposed to sleep? I met her gaze, calm and cold. Not in my bedroom, I said. She actually had tears in her eyes, crocodile tears, so perfect they'd belong on a reality show. You're heartless, she choked, pressing a protective hand to her belly. I took a breath, steady and deep. No, I told her, I'm just finally choosing myself. My mother tried next, her voice syrup-sweet. Nicole, honey, think of how hard this will be on your sister. You know how stressed she is. Be a good daughter. Good daughter. The words felt like shackles. I stood straighter. A good daughter. I repeated, you mean the one who paid the bills? The one who stayed behind to help you keep this place after Dad's layoffs? That good daughter. Her smile faded. She looked down, unable to answer. The police officer returned, clearing her throat. Legally, they can't force you out, she told me. If your name is on the deed, you have every right to remain here. Relief flooded me so hard my knees almost gave out. Thank you, I whispered. My father's face turned red, the calm mask slipping for the first time. Nicole, you're making a scene, he snapped. You will regret this. I wanted to scream at him that I'd regretted trusting them since the day I was born. But I didn't. I just watched as the movers slowly backed away, confused, waiting for orders that would never come. The baby furniture was still stacked in the front yard, delicate and pastel and completely useless now. I almost felt sorry for the twins, unborn and already weaponized. Almost. The officers stayed until the moving truck left. I stood in the doorway, my heart pounding, refusing to back down. Mom tried one last time, a tremor of panic creeping into her voice. Where will your sister go? I shrugged. That's not my problem, I said. For years, everything had been my problem. Their bills, their fights, their choices. But this was mine. The police gave me a quiet nod of respect as they left, and I watched my parents struggle to explain the mess to the delivery driver, who was now awkwardly holding a teddy bear meant for the nursery that would never be built. I stepped back inside, locking the door behind me, letting the silence soak into my bones. I was shaking, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was freedom. For the first time in my life, I chose me, and that choice tasted better than any apology they could ever offer. The next morning, I woke to the quietest house I'd ever known. There was no frantic banging, no shouting through the walls, no moving truck rumbling in the driveway. The police had left, and with them, so had the entire army my parents brought to uproot me. The pastel baby furniture still sat in the front yard, perfectly arranged like a cruel joke. A crib, a changing table, a stack of tiny folded blankets, all for children who didn't even exist yet, while I was treated like I didn't deserve a place to sleep at all. I stood in the doorway with a cup of stale coffee, watching the morning light spill over the cardboard boxes they'd stacked on my porch. Boxes of my own belongings, packed up without asking, like I was being donated to a thrift store. My sister's car pulled up, tires crunching the gravel, and she stepped out, still dressed in her soft, flowing maternity clothes. She looked around like she couldn't believe the nightmare hadn't been fixed overnight. Nicole, we need to talk, she called out, voice already edged with desperation. I set my cup down and crossed my arms. About what? She gestured helplessly at the nursery furniture, her carefully done nails trembling as she clutched the edge of the crib. Where am I supposed to put this? Where am I supposed to go? Not here, I answered flatly. Tay started almost instantly, perfectly timed, just like every performance she'd ever given to get her way. You can't do this, she pleaded. I'm your sister. I'm having twins. How can you be so cold? I wanted to feel something, anything, but I was numb. I paid for this house, I told her. You did not. She shook her head, blinking fast. You're overreacting. You don't even have a family. It's not fair that you get to stay here all alone. That line cut me to the bone, but I refused to show it. That's not my fault, I said through clenched teeth. Her face twisted, ugly and raw. Mom and Dad think you're selfish, she spat. They always did, I shot back. We stood there in a standoff, surrounded by pastel boxes and the cold morning wind, the distance between us wider than it had ever been. Finally, she took a step back, hands protectively on her belly, and sighed. You'll regret this, she whispered. When the babies are born, you'll wish you were part of their lives. I swallowed the ache that tried to rise up in my throat. That's not my burden anymore, I said quietly. She turned and stomped back to her car, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the leftover baby toys in the driveway. I watched as she drove away, a small part of me wondering if she'd ever look at me as more than a free babysitter and a bank account. Probably not. I went back inside, locking the door, and leaned against it until my shoulders stopped shaking. The quiet was back again, the peaceful kind of quiet I'd always dreamed about, but never thought I'd get in this house. I walked through the hall, touching the door frames I'd painted myself, the floorboards I'd fixed, the lights I'd rewired after Dad refused to pay an electrician. Every inch of this place had a piece of me in it, my labor, my time, my sacrifice. They tried to push me out of my own story, but I had written too much of it to walk away, and I wasn't giving them a single page more. Days passed in a strange, echoing calm. The pastel baby furniture stayed stacked in the yard, slowly gathering dust and pollen, like a forgotten monument to someone else's dreams. My parents didn't come back, at least not right away. I think they were hoping I'd feel guilty and cave in on my own. But I didn't. Instead, I went back to work. I picked up a new project, something simple that could keep my mind steady, scrubbing the scuff marks off the hallway walls and oiling the squeaky hinges on the front door. Every small fix felt like staking my flag in this place, proving that I was the rightful owner, no matter what they'd tried to tell me. On the third day, my phone started buzzing again. A string of messages from my mom. You've had enough time to cool down. Don't be dramatic, Nicole. Your sister can't stay in her rental much longer. Every word felt like a slap, like I was the unreasonable one for defending the roof over my head. I didn't reply. Then came my dad's messages, shorter, angrier. Answer your mother. Don't embarrass us. Remember who put food on your table. I nearly laughed at that last one. Remember who put food on your table. Me. It had been me. For years, I'd helped cover grocery bills, paid their overdue utilities, even pitched in on Dad's car loan when he was months behind. I put the phone down on the counter, refusing to get dragged into their guilt game. Instead, I focused on the steady drip of sunlight across the floor, the gentle creak of the pipes, the rhythm of a house at peace for once. In the afternoons, I went for long walks through the neighborhood, breathing in the quiet. People nodded at me politely, no one knowing that just days ago my entire family tried to evict me for someone who hadn't even been born yet. A week later, the inevitable knock came at the door. I opened it to find my parents standing together, a rare united front. My mom's lips were pinched, her hands clutching a folder I recognized instantly, the deed to the house. Nicole, we need to talk, she said. I stepped aside, letting them in only because I was tired of fighting on the porch. They sat stiffly at my kitchen table, their eyes darting around like they barely recognized the place anymore. You can't keep holding us hostage like this, Dad started. It's not fair. Hostage. I nearly choked on the word. I'm not holding you hostage, I said calmly. I'm just living in my own house. Mom unfolded the folder, sliding the deed toward me like she was throwing down a poker hand. "We want to buy you out," she offered. "Take the money, move somewhere else. Start fresh." I felt my jaw tighten. "You want to buy me out," I repeated, "so you can move my sister in." Neither of them denied it. I shook my head. "This is my home," I told them. "I'm not selling. I'm not leaving." Dad's face went hard. "Then don't expect our help again," he snapped. I stood up, planting both hands on the table so they saw I wasn't afraid. "I never needed your help. That was the problem." They didn't stay long after that. Mom gathered the folder like a defeated gambler, Dad muttering under his breath as they left. When the door finally shut behind them, the house felt lighter somehow, like it had finally chosen a side, and chosen me, and that, for the first time, felt like enough. They went silent after that. No more calls, no more texts, no more carefully phrased manipulations. For a while, I wondered if I should be afraid of the quiet, if it meant they were planning something worse. But then I realized I didn't care. Let them plan. Let them spin in cycles trying to figure out how to reclaim what they lost. I was done playing defense. A week later, I opened the front curtains to find the pastel baby furniture still sitting in the yard, weather-stained and sun-faded. It looked almost pitiful, the soft colors turning sickly under the rain and wind. My sister's expensive dream had become trash in less than 10 days. Part of me wanted to laugh. Another part of me just felt tired. I called a donation service to haul it away. When they showed up with a box truck and loaded the furniture in, I didn't even flinch. I signed the paperwork calmly, watching the last pieces of their grand plan vanish down the street. It felt like breathing. Later that afternoon, my sister showed up again. Her hair was tangled, her eyes puffy, and she didn't bother with a performance this time. No tears, no sweetness, just a bitter, defeated rage. "How could you give away my baby's things?" she snapped before she'd even crossed the threshold. I crossed my arms, standing firm in the doorway. It was rotting in my yard. I did what needed to be done. She laughed, sharp and cold. "You're heartless. I hope you know that." I refused to be rattled. "Call me what you want," I replied, "but I'm done being your doormat." Her mouth twisted, venom building, but she couldn't find a comeback. Instead, she turned and stalked away, muttering something about how I'd ruined everything. I watched her leave, the front yard finally empty. No boxes, no chaos, just a patch of battered grass trying to grow back. That night, I slept without waking up in a panic. No nightmares, no pounding heart, no guilt clawing at my chest. For the first time in years, my mind was quiet. In the morning, I opened the windows wide, letting fresh air pour into every corner of the house. The space felt like it had been fumigated of them, scrubbed clean of their demands and their rules. For the first time since I'd signed that refinancing document, I truly believed this house was mine again. Not a favor, not a loan, not a bargaining chip. Mine. And I was never giving it up. A few days later, a certified letter arrived. My stomach tightened as I pulled it from the mailbox, half expecting another legal ambush. But it was just a notice from the bank confirming that all the payments were current. No liens, no debt collectors, no traps left behind. I smiled for real then, feeling the smallest spark of hope. They had taken enough from me, my time, my energy, my sense of belonging. I wasn't letting them steal the rest of my future, too. If they wanted to build a kingdom around my sister and her unborn children, they'd have to do it somewhere else. I was finished sacrificing myself so they could play happy family. No more. Not here. Not ever again. Spring came late that year, cold rain pounding the neighborhood for weeks until the flowers finally dared to bloom. I watched the tulips push through the mud in my yard, their bright colors stubborn and alive, refusing to stay buried. It felt familiar. Life went on. I went back to work, taking on overtime shifts and rebuilding my savings that had been swallowed up by my family's emergencies for far too long. Each paycheck felt like a small apology to myself, a step toward repairing the cracks they'd left in me. The quiet was still strange, but not unwelcome. Some nights, I found myself standing in the hallway, half expecting to hear my sister's voice whining, or my father's boots stomping through the doorway, or my mother's saccharine pleading for just a little more help. But there was nothing, only the soft tick of the old wall clock and my own breath, steady and sure. One afternoon, I stepped out to grab groceries and noticed a car idling across the street. My sister's car. The sight made my stomach twist, but I refused to look away. She finally climbed out, slow and heavy, her pregnancy even more obvious than before. She stood there, arms crossed, scanning the house like it was still supposed to be hers. I didn't invite her in. Instead, I stood on the porch, waiting. "Nicole," she called out, her voice hoarse. "I need you." 3 words that used to unravel me. 3 words I'd once bled for. "What do you need?" I asked, arms folded across my chest. She hesitated, swallowing hard. "I don't have anywhere to go. Mom and Dad are fighting with the landlord at their rental, and there's no room for the babies." My jaw clenched. "You mean there's no room for you?" She winced. "Please," she tried again. "Don't do this. I'm your sister." That word, sister, had been a leash around my neck for as long as I could remember. "I know," I answered quietly, "but you made your choices." Her face fell, color draining from her cheeks. "You're going to leave me on the street with twins." I felt the ache in my chest, an old wound trying to reopen, but I wouldn't let it. "I'm not leaving you anywhere," I told her. "I'm just not saving you anymore." She looked so small then, so powerless, it almost broke me. But then I remembered how small I had felt, standing on the same porch as they tried to evict me to make space for her nursery. She turned away, shoulders shaking, and got back in her car. I watched until she drove off, letting the weight of it all settle in. This was what drawing boundaries looked like. This was what freedom felt like. That night, I made dinner in my own kitchen, alone. No one asking for a bite, no one telling me I should have cooked differently. I sat by the window, listening to rain hit the glass, and for the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid of tomorrow. I was building a future where no one else had the power to erase me ever again. And no matter how many storms came, I was ready. Summer rolled in with heavy heat, baking the sidewalks and shimmering off the rooftops. The neighborhood seemed to slow down, weighed by the sun, but inside my house, there was a lightness I hadn't felt in years. I kept the windows open, letting fresh air move through every corner. It smelled like freedom. I didn't hear from my parents. I suspected they were still tangled in my sister's chaos, trying to scrape together enough money to keep her afloat. The silence from them was a gift, one I unwrapped every day with gratitude. I spent those weeks reclaiming my space. I painted over the scuffed baseboards, scrubbed out stains on the tile, polished every doorknob until it gleamed. Each brush stroke, each cleaning rag, felt like healing, a way to replace their shadows with my own mark. One evening, I found an old photo album shoved behind a stack of their forgotten books. I flipped through page after page of forced smiles, birthday parties, graduations where I stood in the background, holding a gift I'd bought but no one ever thanked me for. The pictures made my stomach twist, but they also made me braver. I closed the album and set it aside for donation. Those memories were no longer welcome here. Then, in the middle of one hot, sleepless night, the doorbell rang. My heart slammed in my chest, old panic flooding back, but I forced myself to breathe. I flipped on the porch light and opened the door just enough to see who was there. It was my sister, alone. Her hair was messy, dark circles under her eyes, her hands trembling as she held her phone. "Nicole," she whispered. I'm having contractions. I don't know where else to go." For a moment, I was 16 again, running to help her when she scraped her knee, running to help her when she flunked a test, running to help her every single time she fell apart. But that was a lifetime ago. "Call an ambulance," I said softly. Her lip trembled. I don't have insurance. I don't know what to do. The ache in my chest was sharp, but I wouldn't let it take over. I'm sorry, I told her, but I can't save you this time. She collapsed onto the porch, sobbing, her arms wrapped around her belly. Every instinct in me screamed to pull her up, to gather her inside, to fix it all again. But I stayed rooted. I had to. I can call an ambulance for you, I offered, voice calm but breaking inside. She didn't answer, just kept crying, rocking back and forth, like a child who'd lost their favorite toy. I stepped back inside and made the call. The dispatcher promised to send paramedics. When I hung up, I felt my knees shaking. I was doing the right thing. I knew I was doing the right thing. But why did it hurt so much? Minutes later, flashing red lights painted the walls of my house again. Paramedics guided my sister away, one of them giving me a quiet, questioning look. I nodded, silently confirming there was nothing more to say. As the ambulance pulled away, I closed the door, locked it, leaned against it until my breathing evened out. I had made peace with being alone. I had made peace with protecting my own heart, and I was not going back. The days after my sister's emergency blurred together in a heavy, uneasy calm. I got word through a neighbor that she'd delivered the twins safely in the hospital and that our parents had finally shown up to take over. I should have felt relief, maybe even joy for her. But mostly, I felt empty. Empty, but steady. It was like finally stepping out of a storm shelter after the tornado had passed. The wreckage was still there, but the sky was clear, and I could finally see my own horizon. I went back to my routines. I worked. I cleaned. I repainted the trim on the front door. Little rituals of ownership, of quiet victory, as if I was telling the walls themselves, "You belong to me." One evening, as I was fixing a loose cabinet hinge in the kitchen, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my dad. "Your sister and the babies will need a place to recover for a while. We'll bring them over this weekend." No question mark. No asking. Just a statement, as if nothing had changed. My hands went cold, the screwdriver slipping from my grip. 1,000 memories flashed through my mind. Boxes stacked on my porch, pastel cribs lined up like an army, my mother's syrupy voice telling me to be a good daughter. Not again. I took a deep breath, wiped my hands on my jeans, and typed back. "No." Dad replied almost instantly. "Nicole, don't be unreasonable. They have nowhere else to go." I stayed at the screen, steady, my heartbeat calm. "That is not my problem," I wrote back. There was no answer after that. Just silence. And that silence felt like winning. That weekend, no one showed up. No one tried to break down my door. The baby furniture never returned. My parents had finally understood there was no path left back into my house, or my life, that I hadn't built myself. I stood at my front window that Saturday morning, watching sunlight pour through the glass. The house was quiet, clean, entirely mine. The floors I had refinished with my own hands, the walls I had painted, the rooms I had repaired. They were safe again. I took a breath that felt like new air. No more apologies. No more rescues. No more pieces of myself handed out to people who'd never protect me in return. I deserved peace. I deserved to live without carrying their chaos. The next day, I walked out into the yard. The grass was starting to grow where the pastel cribs had once crushed it flat. Tiny flowers had pushed up through the soil, braver than I'd ever been until now. I smiled at them, like an ally. From that moment on, I swore to never shrink my life again for someone else's comfort. I would never leave my own home, my own story, to make space for people who treated me like a placeholder. They had taken enough from me. I was finished giving, and I was free.